Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja, coming up in the next 30 minutes. A broad consensus has been achieved between India and China to restore the ground situation, says India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. BRICS can make a difference for the global south by reforming the UN Security Council, says India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar at Kazan. And France holds Lebanon aid conference in Paris amid the Israel-Hezbollah conflict. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has said that India and China have been involved in talks at both diplomatic and military levels to resolve their differences in certain areas along the LAC. In his address at the inaugural session of the Chanakya Defence Dialogue 2024 in New Delhi on Thursday, the minister said that following the talks, a broad consensus has been achieved to restore the ground situation based on the principles of equal and mutual security.
India and China have been involved in talks both at diplomatic and military levels to resolve their differences in certain areas along the LAC. Pursuant to the talks, broad consensus has been achieved to restore ground situation based on the principles of equal and mutual security. The consensus achieved includes patrolling and grazing to traditional areas. This is the power of engaging in continuous dialogue, because sooner or later solutions will emerge. And I think there is no better place to highlight this power of dialogue than this platform of Chanakya Defence Dialogue.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar today reiterated Prime Minister Narendra Modi's "not the era of war" remark, saying that the agreements between the countries must be respected and international law should be adhered upon without exception.
The situation in the Middle East, West Asia for us, is an understandable concern. There is a widespread anxiety that the conflict would spread further in the region. Maritime trade has also been deeply affected. The human and material consequences of further escalation are truly serious. Any approach has to be fair and durable, leading to a two-state solution.
Representing Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the BRICS outreach session in the city of Kazan in Russia, Dr. Jaishankar also stressed that disputes must be settled through dialogue. He said BRICS is a statement in itself and can make a real difference. In this context, he highlighted 5 key points: strengthening and expanding platforms of independent nature to widen choices and avoid being leveraged, reforming established institutions and mechanisms, especially the UN Security Council, both in permanent and non-permanent categories, democratizing global economy through creating more production hubs to build resilient, redundant and shorter supply chains, correct distortions in global infrastructure to enhance logistics, mitigate risks, sharing experiences and new initiatives that are of common interest. Earlier, Dr. S. Jaishankar interacted with students in Russia's Kazan. He talked about Prime Minister's announcement of opening a new consulate in the city. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres told BRICS leaders, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, on Thursday that the world needed peace in Gaza, Lebanon, Ukraine and Sudan. Later, Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet with UN Chief Antonio Guterres for the first time in over 2 years on Thursday, on the final day of the BRICS summit in the Russian city of Kazan. Guterres, who has repeatedly criticized Moscow's military operation against Ukraine, has been involved in peace efforts between the two sides since the early weeks of the conflict. According to Kremlin, the pair is expected to discuss the conflict in Ukraine as well as the escalating crises in West Asia. The two men last saw each other in the first weeks of the offensive when Guterres travelled to Moscow during Russia's offensive in South Ukraine's Mariupol.
We need peace in Gaza with an immediate ceasefire, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, the effective delivery of humanitarian aid without obstacles. We need peace in Lebanon with an immediate cessation of hostilities, moving to the full implementation of UN Security Council resolution. We need peace in Ukraine, a just peace in line with UN Charter, international law, and General Assembly resolutions. We need peace in Sudan, with all parties silencing their guns and committing to a path towards sustainable peace.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that India will retain restrictions on investments from nations with which it shares land borders. Speaking at the Wharton Business School in the US on Tuesday, Sitharaman said, and I quote, "We want business, we want investment, but we also need some safeguards because India is located in a neighborhood that is very, very sensitive." She added that I cannot blindly receive foreign direct investment. It is truth that money is required for investment, but we should not forget its source. Asserting that 1 in every 6 people in the world is an Indian, she said that no country, whether the US or China, can ignore New Delhi today. She made the remarks at a panel discussion organized by the Center for Global Development in Washington, D.C.
India's priority is not to impose its dominance. In the sense we are the biggest democracy, we have in the world the largest population, but to enhance its influence. And you just cannot ignore our economy and the way in which it is growing. So you really can't ignore. And also the geopolitical neighborhood in which we live. No country, the US, which is very far away from us, or China, which is very close to us, cannot ignore us.
Shifting focus to West Asia now, Israel struck Beirut's southern suburbs on Wednesday and Hezbollah fired precision-guided missiles at Israeli targets. A video released by Israeli army showed strikes on a Hezbollah command and control compound in southern Lebanon. The strike eliminated dozens of Hezbollah targets. On the other hand, Hezbollah attacked Israel for the first time with dozens of rockets fired on Thursday morning. A barrage of rockets were launched towards northern Israel. Exchange of fire between the region comes at a time when US Secretary of State Antony Blinken tours the region with the aim to halt the conflict. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a meeting with Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani in Doha on Thursday. Blinken said after the talks that he anticipates negotiators will get together in the coming days for discussions on a ceasefire deal to end Israel's war in Gaza. Speaking alongside Qatar's Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, Blinken said that the two sides discussed options to capitalize on the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and move the abortive negotiations forward. The agenda of Blinken's tour of the region is focused at discussions on ending the conflicts in Israel and Lebanon. The US Secretary also pushed the need for additional aid to Gaza. Turkey launched fresh airstrikes on Kurdistan Workers' Party or PKK militants in Syria and Iraq overnight, hitting 47 targets in response to a gun attack that killed 5 people in Ankara on Wednesday. There have been no claim of responsibility for the attack, during which both militants were killed. Interior Minister said that the male attacker was confirmed to be a PKK member, while the female assailant was not yet identified. Turkish forces struck PKK's 29 targets in northern Iraq and 18 in northern Syria, killing several militants. Turkey regularly targets the PKK in Iraq and Syria with fighter jets and drones. And TUSAS is Turkey's largest aerospace manufacturer, producing drones, helicopters, training craft and developing the country's first indigenous fighter jet, Khan. An aid conference for Lebanon opened in Paris on Thursday in the hope of raising hundreds of millions of dollars, with host France also targeting diplomatic progress for the conflict-ravaged country. The conference was attended by Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati and French President Emmanuel Macron. Reiterating his call for a ceasefire in Lebanon, Macron said that France would provide 100 million euros. Lebanon requires $250 million a month to help millions of people displaced. The key players, including US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, did not attend the conference.
In the immediate term, massive aid must be provided to the Lebanese population, whether it is for the hundreds of thousands of people displaced by the war or the communities that are hosting them. The United Nations has launched an appeal for 426 million euros. France will provide 100 million euros at this conference. What is needed is simply to shelter families, feed children, care for the wounded, and continue to provide schooling for children. Solutions must be found quickly because we must at all costs prevent the displacement of people from the south, Beirut and other regions of Lebanon, and from creating new divisions among the Lebanese people.
On to the Asia-Pacific. North Korea has sent troops to Russia, which was confirmed by US officials on Wednesday. The United States has said that there is evidence that North Korea has sent about 3,000 soldiers who are being trained before being deployed to battlefields in Ukraine. North Korea has promised to provide about 10,000 soldiers to Russia, whose deployment will likely be completed by December.
We assess that between early to mid-October, North Korea moved at least 3,000 soldiers into eastern Russia. We assess that these soldiers traveled by ship from the Wonsan area in North Korea to Vladivostok, Russia. These soldiers then traveled onward to multiple Russian military training sites in eastern Russia, where they are currently undergoing training.
Reacting on this, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol said on Thursday that Seoul will not sit idle over Pyongyang's deployment of troops in Russia. Yoon made these comments after talks with visiting Polish President Andrzej Duda, adding that the two countries agreed North Korea's deployment was a provocation that threatens global security beyond the Korean Peninsula and Europe.
우리 두 정상은 북한의
We agreed that North Korea's dispatch of troops to Russia is a direct violation of UN Security Council resolution and UN Charter, and is a provocation that goes beyond the Korean Peninsula and Europe to threaten global security. I have made it clear that the Republic of Korea will never tolerate this and will take necessary steps with the international community in accordance with the progress of Russia-North Korea military cooperation.
취해 나갈 것임을 분명히 하였습니다.
Amid high tensions in the region, South Korea and the United States have conducted joint air drills to further improve operational sustainability and support capabilities. The 12-day Freedom Flag exercise got underway across various air bases in South Korea, mobilizing over 110 aircraft, including the South's stealth fighters. The exercise is focusing on aircraft deployment and tactics planning before the next week's flight drills. You're with us on DD India Live, still to come on the show. Nearly 25 million votes already cast in the US as Harris and Trump hit battleground states. And India's Union Cabinet approves establishment of a venture capital fund for the space sector.
Recycle, repair, renew. Are these cool trending terms or age-old traditions?
We started distributing the compost. The residents were really happy. It also made them understand the need for waste management, why segregation was important, because it was happening right in front of their houses.
Over the past years, we also expanded into the area of repair, and that obviously has an additional impact on saving e-waste, and that's an additional area where we see quite some potential.
The panels contain a lot of rare commodities, and you can save a lot of energy if you use recycled materials. It's also extremely important to keep those recycled materials here in Germany.
Biotanks, the sewage water gets recycled. It can be used for different purposes or drained into the ground.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Tanvi Taneja. So early voting for the US presidential elections is underway in most states of the United States of America, except for a handful of states where either early voting has closed or a very few states that don't allow it. When election day comes on November 5th, millions of voters would have already cast their ballots early, both by mail and in person. DD India's Amritpal Singh explains what the early voting system in the United States is. He caught up with voters as they came out from polling booths in the county of Travis in Texas.
2 weeks to the election day and millions of Americans are already voting in early voting or through mail-in ballots. Early voting system in the US elections is designed for convenience of voters that they may cast their votes early or by mailing in ballots if they are traveling out of their counties or are unavailable for some reason on the election day.
Early voting is just voting before election day, and I do it to make sure I don't forget to get out and vote.
I was just trying to beat the crowds and get it done before, all the rest of the people tried to.
While people have different reasons for voting early, convenience being one of them, but in this election, there is this whole question of whether people's vote will be registered. I have one voter with me who's just cast her vote. Why did you opt for early voting?
I think there's a lot of excitement around this election, and I also think there's a lot of anxiety. You are hearing about the election for over a year, and so at this point, you just want to get it over with. So one of the reasons why I voted early was that I just wanted to make sure that my ballot was in, and I wouldn't have to wait in the long line. So both the anxiety and the excitement is what brought me here early.
Given the highly polarized campaign that this one has been, some voters are casting or even not casting early votes because they have apprehensions that their votes could be stolen.
I came in today because I wanted to be sure absolutely that my vote was going to be counted. And so I know with early voting that I could find a spot where there is not a big line, but also not have to worry about any weird things happening on election day where maybe people don't get to actually cast their vote.
I'm a little afraid that my state will throw out early votes, so I want to vote on election day this year.
According to early data, there are hints that Republicans may be cutting into the Democratic edge in early voting. That might cause concern for Democrats who remember 2020 when Democratic mail-in votes were critical to Joe Biden's victory. It could also simply mean that Republicans are doing more to encourage early voting. While analysts and strategists are trying to read trends into early voting based on who's voting more, is it Republicans, is it the Democratic voters, is it women, communities like Black Americans or Latinos, etc., and trying to read trends into it. But it's too early to call in the US election because early voting counts as much as the voting on the election day. So the House is still open as far as US elections go. With cameraman Sanjay Jena, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Austin, Texas.
In the latest poll by Wall Street Journal, former President and Republican candidate Donald Trump leads his Democratic rival Kamala Harris 47 to 45%. The poll surveyed 1,500 registered voters from with a margin of error of plus minus 2.5 percentage points. Another poll by the Financial Times showed Trump ahead of Harris 44% to 43% on the US economy. With only 12 days to the final verdict, in an attempt to sway voters, both candidates are taking dig at one another. Vice President Kamala Harris called him a fascist, while Trump highlighted the issue of border security under the current government. In neighbouring Canada, the growing dissident among Canada's Liberal Party MPs over Prime Minister Trudeau's handling of internal and external affairs of the country have made things difficult for him, as the party gave him an ultimatum to either make up his mind or step down. This ultimatum has been given to the Liberal leader to step down by October 28th. The development comes after the party lost two of its strongholds, Toronto and Montreal, in a special election held recently, showing a lack of leadership on Trudeau's part. One of the causes of the rift in the party is attributed to worsening ties between India and Canada more recently since September last year. In Nepal, the Kaski District Court has granted authorities an additional 7 days to detain Rashtriya Swatantra Party President and former Deputy Prime Minister Rabi Lamishane as part of an ongoing investigation into the misappropriation of cooperative savings. Lamichane, who was arrested on October 18th, will remain in police custody for further investigation. Former Deputy Inspector General Chabilal Joshi, also implicated in the case, has been similarly detained for another 7 days. India's space sector is poised for an exponential growth, with the Union Cabinet today approving the establishment of $120 million venture capital fund for the space sector under the aegis of In Space. The move is set to provide a significant impetus to innovation and entrepreneurship in space technology and applications. Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw highlighted the transformative impact of the decision.
कई जो रिच कंट्रीज अगर हम यूरोप की देखें, उन रिच कंट्रीज में जितने यूनिकॉर्न हैं, उनसे ज़्यादा आज भारत में यूनिकॉर्न्स हैं। ये 10 वर्षों का स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम को डेवलप करने का एक बड़ा अचीवमेंट है। और स्पेस जैसे सेक्टर में, जिस सेक्टर की बहुत ज़बरदस्त ग्रोथ होने वाली है, जो एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट स्ट्रैटेजिक सेक्टर है, और जिस सेक्टर में इनोवेशन बहुत बड़ी मात्रा में होने वाला है, 1000 करोड़ रुपए का वेंचर कैपिटल फंड सेटअप किया जाएगा स्पेस सेक्टर के लिए। एंड दिस रिफ्लेक्ट्स आवर ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी's commitment toward creating more and more opportunities for our youth, more and more opportunities for our entrepreneurs, and more opportunities for innovative startups.
Severe cyclonic storm Dana is surging towards Bengal Odisha coast and is expected to make landfall in northern Odisha during the night between Thursday and Friday. It is projected to strike as a severe cyclonic storm with wind speeds reaching up to 120 kilometers per hour. Odisha prepared for the storm's impact by evacuating between 3 to 4 lakh people from vulnerable regions. As a precaution, Biju Patnaik International Airport will halt operations from Thursday evening until 9 a.m. on Friday local time. Flight operations at Kolkata Airport will also be suspended. National Disaster Response Force teams and military rescue units are on standby in coastal areas of the two states to tackle the potential impact of the cyclone. Next, we take a look at other stories making news in India today. In North India's Jammu and Kashmir, the much-anticipated Rajouri-Naushera highway project is nearing completion, bringing major relief to residents of Rajouri and Poonch districts. The project includes 9 bridges, highlighted by a stunning 300-meter span bridge, as well as a tunnel at the Naushera bypass to Rajouri. The All India Institute of Medical Sciences inaugurated 5 state-of-the-art modular operation theatres at the Jayaprakash Narayan Apex Trauma Centre in Delhi. The modular OTs are expected to cater to around 2,500 patients every month. The modular OTs are fully integrated with modern technology to enhance treatment and minimize infections. Significant success has been achieved in the conservation of the great Indian bustard in Rajasthan after a healthy chick took birth through the new technique of artificial insemination. It has been achieved under the Bustard Conservation and Rehabilitation Program, run with the important objective of preventing the extinction of Rajasthan's state bird. Updates from the world of business now. NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang and Reliance Industries Chairman Mukesh Ambani had a fireside chat on artificial intelligence in India at NVIDIA's AI Summit in Mumbai on Thursday. During the chat, Huang announced that Reliance and NVIDIA will join hands for a partnership to build and develop the AI infrastructure in the country. Speaking on India's growing AI capacity and digital infrastructure prowess, Reliance Industries chairman Mukesh Ambani expressed confidence that India will surprise the world with what it can do in the artificial intelligence domain in a few years from now. Boeing factory workers voted to reject a contract offer and continue a more than 5-week strike in a blow to investor and management hopes of a resolution to the dispute. The vote was 64% in opposition to the deal, which offered a 35% rise in wages over 4 years. Union leaders said that they were ready to immediately resume negotiations with Boeing on the first new contract since 2014. Over 30,000 machinists downed tools in Boeing's West Coast factories on September 13th, halting production of the best-selling 737 MAX. Since then, Boeing and the workers' union have been locked in negotiations, with both sides accusing the other of torpedoing talks. On to sports now. India's Washington Sundar claimed a career-best 7-wicket haul, and spin partner Ravichandran Ashwin took 3 wickets to dismiss New Zealand for 259 on the opening day of the second test in Pune on Thursday. Washington justified his selection by scathing through New Zealand's middle and lower order to finish with 7 wickets for 59 runs, while Ashwin took 3 wickets for 64 as India dismissed the tourists cheaply. But Devon Conway made 76, while Rachin Ravindra scored 65 before Washington Sundar took charge and put India in a strong position. In reply, the hosts reached 16 for 1 at stumps on day 1. India lost Rohit Sharma early, but Shubman Gill was unbeaten on 10 with Yashasvi Jaiswal 6 not out at the end of an absorbing day. So that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can catch all the latest news and updates from India and the world on our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. So we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvita Neja. From all of us here in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.